In this video, guys, I will provide you with the 10 worst places to live in the United States for pollution. And some of these places are incredibly bad. I'm talking literally triple the pollution in some of these locations, where I honestly think you would have to have sickness come from this. Everyone at some point would become sick as a result of the air quality in these places. If you don't believe me, literally put this data into ChatGPT and see what it tells you. It'll tell you exactly what I'm saying. The 10 worst, basically, cities, and then I'll follow that up with the 10 worst locations, because in some cities, the city's actually not too bad, and it gives you this false perspective, basically false impression. That city's okay, but then there's like little towns in some of these cities, or basically 30% of that city where pollution is staggeringly bad. So my top 10 will be the 10 cities. Then the next 10 will be the 10 locations around the US that you do not want to be living. Remember, this is not based on opinion. These are statistics from the EPA, from various different measuring instruments, which actually show us the data itself. In spite of a growing number of electric cars on the roads in the United States, and more renewable energy being added to the electricity mix, there is still a ton of toxic PM 2.5 emissions and pollution in many cities in the United States. But some cities are actually not bad. Places where you'd see the numbers and think to yourself, yeah, okay, I wouldn't mind living there. That's not going to kill me. I'm not going to get cancer from living there. Other places, if you've seen the numbers, you might want to move. And I'm not exaggerating. I honestly, if I was living in a place, one of these places, I would be looking to move. And I genuinely mean that. You guys know my personal family situation. I'm telling you, all of these things we're breathing in are contributing to this incredible stratospheric rise in cancer around the world. And I can't say that any more meaningfully to tell you that this is killing you. Here are the 10 most polluted regions and the 10 most polluted cities in the United States. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. Cities and locations. It's two different things. If you actually look at the 10 most polluted cities in the United States, it's a little bit different to the 10 most polluted regions. Only a few weeks ago, data was shared for all of 2025 for the 10 most polluted cities in the United States. And what are we talking about by pollution? Well, we're talking about PM 2.5 particulate. Basically what this is, it's the annual average PM 2.5 in micrograms. And these small particulates, they are really, really bad for you. PM 2.5 actually means particulate matter less than 2.5 micrometers in diameter, which is what you inhale into your lungs. Then that's very easily goes straight into your bloodstream. But it comes from a very wide variety of sources. It's not just cars. These fine particles are small enough to penetrate deep into your lungs and even enter the bloodstream, making them a serious, serious health hazard. Here are the main sources of PM 2.5. Number one, vehicle exhaust, especially from diesel engines. Number two, coal, oil, and gas power plants, which are said to have killed 22 million people prematurely in the United States over the past 30 years. Residential wood burning and open fires. Now, believe it or not, having an open fire or having a Kunara heater, one of those wood burning fires in your own home, actually does significantly contribute to pollution if lots of people have them. Industrial processes and factories, agricultural burning and bushfires and wildfires, which we've seen in California and we're just seeing recently in Chicago. Cooking emissions, especially frying and grilling indoors. Now, there are actually secondary PM 2.5 emissions as well, and these are formed when gases react in the atmosphere. First of these is sulfur dioxide, or SO2, from fossil fuel combustion that forms sulfates. The second is nitrogen oxides from vehicles and power plants that forms nitrates. The third is volatile organic compounds, VOCs, from paints, fuels, and solvents. And the fourth is ammonia from livestock and fertilizers. Now, there are other sources of PM2.5 like construction dust, tire and brake wear, dust resuspension from roads, and natural sources include sea salt, which can be both good and bad, volcanic ash, pollen, which can fragment into respirable particles under some conditions, and soil and dust storms. So in summary, the majority of harmful PM2.5 in urban areas comes from fossil fuel combustion, transport industrial emissions, and residential burning. In other words, transport makes up really the bulk of the worst PM2.5. South Padre Island in Texas. That actually has the worst PM2.5 emissions in all of the United States by a large margin at 21. Pomona, California is at 16 in second place. Burns, Oregon is at 15 in third place. Ontario, California at fourth, 15 as well. Garland, Texas in fifth place, 13.6. Fresno, California, 13.3. Los Angeles, California, 13.2. Los Angeles, California has actually been improving because of its adoption of EVs. But anyway, it's still in seventh place. Well, actually, last year, I believe it was in first place. So that's a good step up. Eighth, Bakersfield, California at 12.8. Long Beach, California is in ninth at 12.6. And Signal Hill, California is in 10th at 12.6. You can see most of these places are in Texas or California. Why are most of them in California? For one, well, because there's 40 million people in California and there's a lot of cars, and still most of them are not electric. Now, looking at numbers showing actual locations within cities, looking at this data from a different perspective, the numbers are actually quite different. And it shows a breakdown of small areas. And if you live in that small area within a city, then you're going to be breathing in just crazy amounts of pollution. The worst place is Bakersfield, California. The area around Bakersfield, an agricultural town in California's Central Valley, 100 miles north of Los Angeles, has the most unhealthy air in the United States, which is quite a shock. Bakersfield is in an unlucky location surrounded by mountains that trap toxic farming chemicals, dust, truck and train fumes, and oil drilling exhaust, as well as pollution blowing south from other parts of California, according to local air experts. Environmentalists charge that local air regulators have worsened the situation with lax enforcement against industrial polluters, and that's part of the problem. The worst census tracts in Bakersfield had up to 16 micrograms of fine particulate pollution per cubic meter over the years studied, well above the threshold set by the EPA requiring remediating action. The entire region around the south end of California's Central Valley has failed to meet the Clean Air Act target for more than 25 years. Environmentalists from the region sought help from California legislators last year, saying local regulations have been favoring industry at the expense of public health. Federal civil rights laws could apply to the city for allowing a disproportionate amount of air pollution to fall onto communities of color and disadvantaged populations, while other communities receive the benefits of programs aimed at cleaning the air, said Perry Alerts, staff attorney with leadership. Now, guys, I don't like it when we hear this stuff disadvantaging people of color, because the truth is poverty does not distinguish what color you are. Poverty doesn't distinguish whether you're white, red, orange, or black. So to me, this issue is a big issue as well. But many impoverished areas in the United States are facing very unhealthy levels of air quality, and they're kind of being ignored. A coalition of groups represented by the legal non-profit Earth Justice is suing the EPA to ensure it enforces the Clean Air Act and takes action to bring pollution levels down. Now, that was back in 2024. Since then, I'm not sure what's happened. But in second place was South Los Angeles. There's an area of South Los Angeles where there's a maze of freeway interchanges, rail yards, warehouses, and that has been a dumping ground for industry. In this cluster of landlocked neighborhoods and small cities, including Compton, Maywood, and Paramount, residents They are basically breathing in air that well and truly exceeds EPA limits of 12. Compared with those living across town in Bel Air, South LA's residents, who are majority minorities, breathe 50% more of this pollution. And Bel Air is, well, yeah, I mean, it's people who are wealthier. Chicago's south and west sides, these areas have been pretty shocking. These neighborhoods, they have the third highest levels of fine particulate pollution in the nation. And right now it's actually worse because of the wildfires in Canada that have blown across a whole lot of dust. Now, apparently, the aim has been to eliminate stockpiles of pet coke, a byproduct of oil refining that was stored at the nearby port, and send clouds of toxic black dust into the local neighborhoods. Now, another really bad location is northwest in Indiana's industrial zones. While considered a distant suburb of Chicago, northwest Indiana is a giant industrial pollution hub in its own right. The most polluted portion of the region, including most of Gary and the city of East Chicago, has long been a mecca of the steel industry. While job cuts in recent decades have left some parts abandoned, many factories still operate. Air pollution experts have faulted the state of Indiana for its lack of controls on emissions. It leads the nation in the amount of industrial toxic pollution emissions per square mile, according to an EPA report in 2021. In fifth place is a central swathe of Indianapolis, Indiana. The city that hosts the famous Indianapolis 500 Raceway has long had an affinity for internal combustion. As in Houston, federal statistics show that residents they drive more than almost any other metro area in the United States. And as a result, pollution's pretty bad. For years, the region has also been dealing with the side effects, high levels of air pollution, blanketing much of Indianapolis's central core. Professor Gabriel Philippi, director of Indiana University's Environmental Resilience Institute, says transportation sources are to blame for much of the city's fine particulate pollution. We are famous for being the crossroads of America, he said. We have a ton of roads that go through here, noting that the city is in a bullseye of national highways. In sixth place is a large portion of Houston, where Houston is not that good either. Air pollution in Houston is bad in these certain areas. You can see on the map here which locations are bad and which locations are not so bad. To be honest, I personally probably wouldn't want to live in Houston after seeing this. And that said, I would on the outskirts of Houston. It looks all right. I mean, on the outskirts of Houston, I think it's pretty okay. But on the interior of Houston, as you can see by this red of the map, it looks pretty shocking. A swathe of the St. Louis metro area also looks, spots of it look pretty bad as well. In metropolitan St. Louis, the areas with the highest air pollution sit north of Del Mar Boulevard, the racial and socioeconomic dividing line known as the Del Mar Divide. They stretch from the northern part of the city of St. Louis across the Mississippi River and into impoverished communities in East St. Louis. Overall, the populations in these neighborhoods are experiencing very high levels of PM 2.5. Why? Well, the region's air is affected by a number of energy plants that still use coal, including one a few miles north of the most polluted neighborhoods. And coal is far worse than what we previously realized. I believe of any of these locations I've shared with you so far, that's the one area that would be the absolute worst, living near this coal power plant. So if you live near there, if you've got a friend that lives near there, please move away. This is a really weird one. Number 8 is semi-rural areas in central Pennsylvania. I mean, it's not an overly populated area. It's a rural area, but the air pollution epicenters in this central Pennsylvania region differ from others around the nation. Instead of urban agglomerations, they are more like freckles scattered across the land. They also have a higher share of white residents compared with other hotspots. The central Pennsylvania areas, predominantly agriculture areas, but there is also transportation thoroughfare, and it's dotted with clusters of industry, including food processing plants, metals fabricators, and plastics manufacturing. So you can see here that even if you live in a rural area, such as Carlisle or Lancaster or Lebanon or Harrisburg, you can still have certain small pockets where pollution is really, really bad. Next, in ninth place is a semicircle of neighborhoods in central Atlanta. Central Atlanta, like right there in the CBD, it looks like there's quite a bit of that area there where you would not want to be living. The map of the most polluted area in Atlanta looks similar to the near century-old federal redlining maps that once categorized certain areas of the city as hazardous. And there was a lot of foreign-born people that were born there, apparently. A lot of those people probably still live there. Homes in the areas are being faced with way more pollution than they'd want to be. And these areas here where if you live in these locations that you can see on this map, I wouldn't want to be personally. Now, finally, in 10th place. In 10th place, we have central areas in Birmingham, Alabama. Now, there's plenty of areas in Birmingham that look totally, in fact, there's areas in Birmingham that look like there's almost no pollution there at all. Very, very clean air. But then near West End in Birmingham and Bessemer, North Birmingham as well, there's some really, really bad areas that you wouldn't want to be in. Birmingham has long been known as one of the nation's most racially divided or segregated cities. And yeah, the air quality here is pretty poor. Over the city's long industrial history as an iron and steel hub, the dirtiest industries have tended to be located where property values are the lowest and where the people had the least political clout to actually push back and do anything about it. So that's the list of, ultimately, I've given you 20 different locations. Obviously, as you can see, the final 10 were much more specific with maps. But the first 10 showed you what is the most actual up-to-date data, which has been from the last 12 months, showing you the air quality ratings. If you can, I honestly mean this with everything I'm saying to you, totally genuinely, I would move out of those areas if you can. I honestly believe that the primary reason, I believe there's two reasons for the enormous rise in cancers, but lung cancer is a good example. Why is it that 30% of people who get lung cancer have never, ever smoked a cigarette in their lives? Never. 30%, right? When you think of someone getting lung cancer, you think, oh, they must have smoked a lot of cigarettes. And in fact, 30% of them never went near one, never had passive smoking, never did any of that. And experts now believe that one of the biggest reasons for that, or possibly the biggest reason for that, is this PM 2.5 particulates. So I encourage everyone strongly to do their best, everything they possibly can, if it's within your power, to live in a city where you're not going to be breathing in these poisonous pollutants on a daily basis. Thanks for watching.